joining us today. This is our second event where we are trying to bring information to the downtown business community about the really major and exciting projects that are about to take place, which we collectively call the Street Garage Redevelopment Initiatives. These projects there really are two projects we want to talk to you about today. These are projects that are relating to the Vecino Development Group and to Jeffrey Rimland in his development project. We will not spend a lot of time today talking about the contents of those projects. For example, in the Vecino project, there will be affordable housing, there will be a conference center, there will be some additional retail, and in the Rimland project there will be housing, and there'll be in both projects there obviously will be parking. So today we want to focus mainly on the logistics. We want to focus on the scheduling. We want to focus on some of the things that we relate directly to you, downtown businesses and downtown property owners. So we've got a panel of three people who are going to be working with us today. And I think let's start with, so we're going to hear from someone from the Vecino project. We're going to hear from someone from the Rimland project. And then we've also asked JoAnn Cornish from the city of Ithaca to be here as well to talk to us about the city's perspective on this as well. So why don't we start with Bruce? Bruce is, I keep getting his title wrong, but
no. There is no wrong title.
Bruce is the Vecino person who is most in charge. He is the person who really has been leading the charge here in Ithaca, who has sort of been repping this project from really over the last year or so, trying to get it to the finish line, and we'll be working with it throughout the process. So Bruce, why don't you give us an overview of Vecino's plans and some logistics that go along with that.
Can do. Thanks, Gary. Yes, I have a title of Vice President of Development, so my role at Vecino Group is really overarching over many projects. However, I've been given the opportunity to shepherd this project, particularly through the design approvals and start of construction stage. And so we're getting close to that. And I took the project over from Molly Chang. Some of you may or may not have known her. She was an Ithaca native and got married and moved to London recently. So I stepped in and filled her role in this process. So thanks everybody for joining us. We are absolutely excited to be coming to town, so to speak, with this project. It's been in the works for a couple of years now, more than a couple of years, and glad to see the excitement and the job creation and the new economic development that's happening in this area, not just our project, but with the adjacent project, also with the Herald Square project and all the past several. I know it's been a real rough road for construction purposes in the Commons area, but I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. Quickly, I'll go through a whole bunch of slides fairly quickly, and I'll stop on a few and chat about some very specific things. But you can see here the list of approvals, and we started back in June of 18 on this project with the RFP process with the city, and the last big milestone we achieved was early in February with the final Common Council Disposition Development Agreement approval. Right now, we're in for a building permit. We're talking about vibration monitoring around the buildings. We're talking with some of the neighboring business and property owners about right-of-way encroachments, working on all the legal agreements. We did get our final IDA approval, and then starting demolition, hopefully in April of the western section of the garage, and then financial closing on the housing project anticipated in June, and then completion of the project in late 2023. For those of you who don't know, Vecino is a company devoted to housing for the greater good. Every project we touch has to address a broader community issue. And in this case, the broader community issue for us was the redevelopment of Green Street as a whole. but then also specifically the needs of the city for additional parking and the desire for a conference center sort of led us to respond to the RFP. As long as the housing stays intact, we're in for everything else and helping it, making it happen. Those projects are what we call a zero-sum game for us. We're essentially assisting the city and the stakeholders for the conference center in obtaining the financing and the design and the construction, and essentially turning it over to them for operations. And so those two projects are technically a zero-sum game for us. The game changer for us is the 181 units of housing. And so the conference center also has a mission now to, actually be at one of the economic recovery engines of the, not just downtown, but the entire area. So they want to be sure it's clearly not just a downtown project. This is going to bring not only jobs, but also lots of potential people to the town for a variety of activities. Asteri, the name A-S-T-E-R-I, Asteri, comes from the Greek word star. And like those in the sky, we want this residential facility to be a place that that people call home and serves as a constant in the lives of the folks who call it home. And so that's sort of our internal brand for this particular project. And just want to make sure everybody understood where that came from. I think everybody pretty much knows the context of the site, but our DDA, our Disposition and Development Agreement, covers the conveyance from the city to us of the center section of the garage and the western section of the garage. The western section will be demolished. The center section will be expanded by 4 levels. And then the Rimland project to the east of us, the eastern section is be conveyed to that project team, and Gregg will go into that project a little more detail here in a bit. I think this is an important graphic. It really shows the entire block development. It shows the Marriott off on the end, which is already in existence. The Herald Square project, which was in development when we created the slide, is now completed. The 3 components of our project, the residential tower of 9 stories, the conference center of 3 stories that are stacked on top of one another, and then the expansion of 4 additional levels in the parking garage is the Vecino project. And then the Ithaca Properties project is the demolition and reconstruction of 2 levels of garage, and then a residential tower on top of that. Our project comprises of roughly 49,000 square foot conference center. It's actually a little bit bigger than that. 181 residential units and 351 total parking spaces in the center section of the garage. Very quick understanding of the lay of the land, so to speak, here. So the yellow diagram on top here is the existing conditions. There's a garage, a western section in the Cinemapolis in the center section. It's being subdivided now into 3 parcels. The city will still retain parcel C, which is yellow, and parcel A and B will be turned over and conveyed to the Vecino Group for the development project. One of the key elements of our project and our disposition agreement was to improve the area in front of the Cinemapolis on the ground level underneath the existing garage space. And so you can see Home Dairy Alley here off the top of the sheet. And as you come south out of Home Dairy Alley and go to Green Street, we're trying to keep it fairly straight alignment so that you can have a straight pedestrian pathway, but also then creating some little niche areas and landscaping and bench seating and some places to hang out undercover so that it is, available for that. And then this area, the 10 feet roughly between the 2 buildings, would be open to the sky except for a couple of bridges that cross over to connect to the garage to the building. As Gary mentioned, we won't go into a lot of detail for the projects themselves, but the first floor is kind of important to the conference center project. So if you look at this diagram, the left side of this is the conference center and residential tower. The right side is the center section of the garage. And so this is a floor plan of the first floor of the mixed use building. To the left of this drawing would be City Hall parking lot, and to the right of it would be the Cinemapolis. And so the first floor has got some breakout meeting rooms in the center with a large pre-function area on the ground level that looks onto Green Street. And then, as Gary mentioned, a little retail space in the southwest corner that is currently being discussed to be some sort of a food service establishment. There's also an entrance to the residential area over here on the right-hand side of the screen where my cursor is kind of pointing. There's a set of doors that come in, and this is completely separate entrance for the residential function. They come in and have their own set of 3 elevators that serve the residential tower and mail area and parcel lockers and things like that. The conference center has an entrance on the southeast corner up by Green Street entrance. There's also one at the center section here along Green Street and one on the western side coming off of City Hall. So the conference center's got 3 separate entrances and then 2 grand stairs and potentially an escalator depending on all the final costs and scenarios. So, and then you go to the second floor, there's a grand ballroom. For large events, but it could also be broken down into some smaller spaces if necessary. There's a large catering, actually commercial kitchen on the left side over here, and then a big banquet restrooms on the right side. That basically is a conference center. You have to have pre-function space, you have to have the ballroom, you got to have a kitchen and a lot of bathrooms. And so that's really the main second level. And then the third level of the conference center comprises of some storage and some mechanical and some administrative offices. Once you get to the 4th floor of our project, it starts the residential portion. So if you get in an elevator on the residential side, you'll come up and be in one of these 3 elevators and you'll get off, or you can cross over into the garage at this level as well. In this area, we do have a fitness room and some leasing offices and a roof terrace and a community room and some sort of community spaces, and then some apartments as well on this level. As you go vertical, starting from the 5th through the 12th floor, it's purely a residential tower with a stair at each side, common laundry on each floor, and many apartments. So some of you may have seen some of these exterior elevations. These are the product of going through a series of meetings with the planning board, and are pretty well set in stone for now. So. Fairly modern looking exterior, first 3 levels, clearly conference center visually, and then some windows and treatments up here for the residential, some breakdown and breakup of some of the materials and colors and massing. So trying to comply with all the requirements from the zoning and planning process. And then the garage over here, again, adding the brick here is existing. We're going to add the 1, 2, 3, 4 levels that you see above the brick. And then we're also going to bookend each end with a series of planters and vine structures on stainless steel cables. And so that'll sort of brighten up that portion of the project a little bit. Scrolling through some of the images here, we're also working to develop some art elements within the east-west alley between our project and Herald Square. There's some opportunity for that. So still in the planning and sort of conceptual stages of that, but that is another element of our project. Some high-level renderings. One thing I wanted to point out that didn't show on the floor plans is in the upper left corner up here, you can sort of see a sky terrace. The 12th floor of our project will have another outdoor space on the 12th floor that will be up in this upper area up here. And so we've got 2 outdoor spaces, one on the 4th floor with the common area, and then one on the 12th floor with another community room up on the upper topmost level. Bottom left corner here, you can sort of see some of the additional treatments in that area in front of Cinemapolis. This is from Home Dairy Alley looking south. And then the upper right corner, you can sort of see the open to the sky walkway between Green Street and Home Dairy Alley. A couple of shots of the pre-function space, conference center, pre-function space, 2nd floor of the conference center. Just a very massing and scale diagram of the ballroom. And then we get into the weeds. And I'll spend a little bit of time talking about construction logistics here. So one of the first phases we're going to do is demolish the existing garage on the western side, and that's going to require some space all the way around in order to maneuver and move things and unload and unload trucks. So this will be the initial phase of construction fencing that will happen. We will end up putting some scaffolding along the south side of Herald Square to protect for pedestrian walkway. So that pedestrian walkway will remain open throughout the course of the project, both for general public as well as egress and use of the Herald Square building. And at this period of time, we're also going to continue to construct scaffolding along the north side of the existing garage between us and Center Ithaca, as the construction of the 4 levels above the existing garage happen. So the little dark line with the squares represents covered scaffolding. We're going to have a hard barrier over here for a period of time while we're doing the demolition that's going to be pretty tight. It's going to maintain a 16-foot wide drive as well as a few parallel parking spaces available for loading and unloading And then, you should be able to get back in here and turn around as needed to get back out. But it's going to be pretty tight during the demolition phase. We're also going to be, as Greg has talked to me earlier about, we're not closing the lanes on Green Street. We're just sort of shifting them over a little bit and narrowing them a little bit. We've gotten a DOT approval for this process because there's going to be construction deliveries and drop-offs happening in this area, not just in front of our project, but all the way down the road in front of the Rimland project as well. There will potentially be times that this Green Street goes down to one lane of traffic for a brief day or so, or a couple of days potentially, depending on some very specific deliveries and requirements and permissions. But by and large, every day for the next couple of years, you'll still see 2 lanes of traffic on Green Street. We also worked with Eric Hathaway and the folks at Traffic Engineering for updating loading zone over here in front of City Hall, as well as another loading zone up here on Cayuga Street on the north of Green Street. So this is like a phase 1. This area between Home Dairy Alley and Green Street will be closed during this period of time. And so people coming down Home Dairy Alley wanting to get across to Green Street will have to either traverse underneath, over, and then over to the intersection and then across and back over. Or they can come down the Commons and just get on Cayuga Street, cross the intersection and come across. And so we've got some diagrams for that as well. Phase 2, while we're doing hard construction and steel erection, will be very similar. We're going to open this back up a little further on the west side and give a little bit more room for maneuverability on the west side once we start going vertical. But the Home Dairy Alley connection will still be closed during this period. There's also some utility work that will be happening during this period as well, which is still TBD because I don't have that information from NYSEG yet. Phase 3, again, looks very similar, except we've now reopened the walkway in front of Cinemapolis back to Green Street. We'll still have a fence across there and won't allow people to get within, proximity of the construction work, but at least that walkway would be open. And these dates are very generic in nature at this point, depending on the timing and the stages of construction. And then the last stage of construction looks similar to that. By this time, we will have pulled down some of the scaffolding potentially on the garage side and continue to maintain the open connection between Home Dairy Alley and Green Street. And so that's a high level view of that. And just an example of some of the graphics and pedestrian detour signage that we're proposing. Again, won't go into a lot of detail here, but we are working really hard to make sure that everybody, if you're standing here at the top of Home Dairy Alley, getting ready to enter it, you'll know that you have a couple of options to get across the street. You won't be able to go through in front of the Cinemapolis. And so you either come across and behind through the alley and then look over, or you can go back all the way over to Cayuga Street, cross and back over, with a similar sign on the south side of Green Street, directing you to how to get to the Commons. And then some detour signage as you come down out of Home Dairy Alley, going to different businesses or different places. And so just trying to keep people moving in a pedestrian format. And at all times during this process, the entrance to Cinemapolis will remain open. I know that as of today, at least, I don't think they're technically open yet, but we hope that pretty soon they'll be able to open their doors and actually show movies in person. But our plan is to maintain full access to the entrance of Cinemapolis during the entire course of construction. So that's a quick overview of the Asteri project. And at this point, we'll hold any full questions at this point. I'll let Greg take the screen and maybe talk a little bit about the Ithacan project next door.
Yeah, let me introduce Greg. Greg is representing the Rimland project, which is known as the Ithacan, and he's going to give you a similar update on that project, its status, and again, some of the logistics about it. I should mention that to ask questions, we have some questions that have already come ahead of time, but you can put a question in the question and answer box on your screen, or you could also put them in the chat. And both Jennifer Kushner from the city and Allison Graffin from the DIA will be collecting those, and we'll be sharing those with the panelists when we're all done. So, Greg.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Bruce. We do want to share in the excitement of that Bruce stated earlier. Naturally, it's an exciting project for both us and the city, and actually working in concert with Vecino Group has been great so far, and we continue to hope that we move forward and we have very successful projects on both ends. So on behalf of the Green Street Development Partners, LLC, which Mr. Rimlin, who has been a long-standing building owner and we call him a resident of Ithaca. He's been there for so long. So he is a major partner in the Green Street Development Partners LLC, and our project is going to be referred to as the Ithacan. So it's a brief overview, and I hope everybody can see my screen, and then I'll walk through briefly some of the floor plans and some of the pertinent information on those documents that I can show you. And again, questions, we will take questions at the end. But this is a 200 unit, 157 new parking spaces. The units are comprised of a 2-bedroom, a 1-bedroom, and a studio. And I'll show you floor plans of that. It is a mixed use. It has some housing, some market rate housing, and we are basically on the eastern side of the parking garage. So we will be demolishing our side of the parking garage and then constructing 2 levels. Actually, there's 3 levels of parking, one being a mezzanine, and basically the way the foundation is, it ends up being a mezzanine in between. So I will show you that shortly, but we'll walk through. This is basically a rendering, and I have some other renderings. Basically, level 1 will be comprised of 36 spaces, and then this center section is some amenity spaces and some offices and so forth. Level 2 is the mezzanine. Again, there's some restrooms, some offices, and some common space. Level 2 and 3 are basically the same footprint. They have 61 spaces on each level, so you can see that. So that's what we refer to as the podium section of our project. And then from level 4 to level 14 becomes the tower. And as you can see, the tower in this level, from level 4 to level 14, as I said, there is a mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and studio apartments. And basically layouts are identical from floors 4 to 14. So skipping through 5. Don't want to bore you with all the same level of information. I will show you some of the floor plans. Why we're doing this from a logistics standpoint, Bruce did share the logistics. We are planning to do the lane closure and the restriping of the lanes and the barricades on Green Street on or about the 22nd of March, weather permitting naturally, and we're all hoping and praying that we don't get any heavy snow or any other severe conditions that would, put that off or hamper that in any way. As you get to level 14, the roof plan, we will have a roof terrace, which I'll show you a rendering later. It will have some amenities on it, and we'll have a fire pit, tables, chairs, and so forth. And we're still working out some other items that we're going to put up there as well. And basically it'll be looking out from the roof out at the commons area, and it'll present a good space for people that want to get out and get some fresh air, and basically in the summer months utilize that. So as I spoke earlier, these are basic layouts that we're looking at from our apartments, and we have studio units, 1-bedroom units, and then actually the biggest unit being a 2-bedroom unit. In some of the amenity spaces, we are still looking at some other tenants and some other businesses that could possibly go there. I know that, between the Rothschild, we are doing renovations in right now as we speak, which will hold an Ithaca College set up for physicians and physician assistants. A clinic, I believe, is in that space. And then we're doing other renovations, which will include a fitness center in that area as well. And then naturally in the existing Rothschild, there is current tenants right now, lawyers' offices and other tenants are in there. So basically from an elevation standpoint, as you can see, our whole project impacts Green Street. We have no impact except for some signage, re-signage that we'll be putting in down the road on the common side. But other than that, our whole project encompasses the eastern portion of the garage and Green Street. So this is basically the building elevations on Green Street. Okay. This is the elevation from the commons. This is the existing building right now, the existing Rothschild. We are doing a new parapet and a new front storefront right now as we speak. Should be completed very shortly. Some renderings. This is the rendering view from Green Street. Our main entrance to this building is on Green Street, as I said earlier. So here's our main entrance, and naturally we'll have a curb cut so people can pull up, and then you'll have entrance and exits from the garage. So this is the rooftop terrace, and again, this is a rendering. We are still working through some of the details, but from a basic setup, we are looking at a fire pit, couches, chairs, a nice assembly space for the residents. Rendering view from the commons. This is the existing Marriott, our tower, our existing Rothschild building. I know a question came up at the last presentation. This entrance to the parking garage will be closed during construction, but will be reopened upon completion. And that's the alleyway. There's a stairway to the existing parking garage. So some signage. An aerial view, basically, this is a hotel, our tower, and then as Bruce stated, this is the Vecino Properties project. So the skylines of Ithaca with all the new buildings going up is gonna look very, very nice. It's gonna create a great urban setting down there. And then this is just some street views. So I will stop my screen. So from that, that's basically our presentation of our project. We look forward to working with the city and with Bruce and the Vecino Group and the contractors. Just from a standpoint, we do have weekly coordination meetings as a group so that we can keep everyone, engaged. And actually, we are trying to create a good environment during the building process, and then naturally, upon building completion, great project for the city. So I'll turn it back over to Gary.
Thanks, Greg. So those are the two projects. Before we go to question and answers, I wanted to see if JoAnn Cornish from the city could maybe say a few words as well. One of the things I can add while she's getting ready is that in the near future, sometime in the near future, we will have another presentation where we talk about the conference center and how that's going to work for the community. And we'll do that with our friends at the Chamber of Commerce and some of the other partners who are part of that project. But like I said, today we wanted to focus mainly on the logistics on these projects so that businesses would know and owners would know what's happening, when it's going to happen, and what impacts there may be. JoAnn?
Yeah, so sorry I was on late. I had a little trouble getting into the meeting, and I won't take a lot of your time, but thank you everyone for joining us today. And I know we're all a bit weary from all of the construction, but for people like Jen and myself and Gary too, this is a culmination of years and years of visioning for the city. We're really excited about these two projects. We know it's going to be a long haul. We're here to help and to assist in any way that we can to make this these next couple of years easier for you. Your businesses are extremely important to us. You know, we weathered through this with Herald Square, and we hope to do the same with these two projects. And at the end of this, I think we'll see just a transformation of the core of the city, which has really been a goal, certainly from the city's perspective for a very long time. So we're here for you. Our contact information will be out there. We hope to assist you in any way that we can on a daily basis if necessary. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over because I know we have some questions that we want to get to. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, JoAnn. Yeah, as we get ready to do the questions, let me just put one thing out there that might be important. Well, I mean, I'd say two things. One would be from the DIA standpoint, we've been working with the city and the developers on, again, mitigation and mitigation approaches throughout this project. And we will be certainly looking at doing some marketing mitigation. We have been working already on parking mitigation, trying to make sure that everyone who parks in the green garage today or in the past will have an opportunity to have a spot somewhere else. That work is already ongoing. If you or any of your employees still have questions about that, you should contact our office and we can help you get you straight in terms of where you should be parking and what your options are. We're doing that again in conjunction with the city and also with our Go Ithaca alternative transportation program as well. So let's see. One of the questions that really comes to my mind right off the top of the bat would be, let's be clear about sort of when things are starting. I know Gregg referenced that a little bit, but I think my understanding as of earlier this week would be that it's most likely that the Ithacan Project will lead the way and at least start some of the work, to be followed by the Asteri project. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the lead in, what we're going to see over the next 30 days-ish, and then what that means in terms of when garage parking will reopen toward the end, toward the end of this year.
So I will take it from our Ithacan project, since we will be going first, starting first, I should say. We're looking at starting the lane closures and the restriping of the street per our DOT permit on or about the 22nd of March. So we had a discussion yesterday about closing the garage, and I believe it's going to close. We are going to look to close the garage March 22nd, which is a Monday, for a period of time until we can, basically garage closes for the entire garage closes March 22nd. And then Bruce and I are going to work out when the center section of the garage could reopen to be used. We will not be able to reopen our side of the garage until probably the summer of 2022. So, but there will be we will be able to open the center section should be able to be reopened sometime prior to the holidays, right around on or about the holidays, and Bruce could take it from there. So that's the direction right now. And then right now we are, as soon as we get those barricades and our lane closures in place, we're looking to start demolition sometime in early April, our hard demolition. So you'll be seeing a lot of action within the next 30 to 45 days. So start getting pretty busy down on in that area, the Green Street area.
So Gregg, I'll take it from there. And I do want to clarify something. You said a couple of times that you're going to start the lane closures. I think what you mean is the lane repositioning.
Yes, excuse me.
Yeah.
I always call it the lane closures from years of doing this. It's basically the lane reshift or something. They will call it.
So both of our projects are going to pick up the sidewalk and the parking spaces along Green Street as a construction zone. And then the two lanes of traffic will be shifted over a few feet and tightened up a little bit, again, through the approval of the DOT in that process. So yeah, as Gregg mentioned, they're taking the lead and going ahead and starting the lane shift process here pretty quickly. And then the closure of the center section of the garage. Once they start the demolition of their garage, the closure of the center section will happen. And so that's going to happen here, probably in that same March 22nd, week of the 22nd, maybe the week after that specifically. But that will close down the entire Green Street garage. And then our project is slated to close financing late here in March, the last week of March, which will then turn us loose to go ahead and get the construction team mobilized on site and start the temporary fencing around the western section, center section of the garage. And then the demolition of the western section would probably come in mid to late April as we're working through that process. And then as Greg mentioned, our plan is to then immediately start on the expansion of the center section of the garage. Is the first part of the work that needs to happen. At the same time, we're hoping to work through some of the utility rework with NYSEG. And then once the center section of the garage is complete, it will be reopened. And our goal was to have that in October. We've delayed our starting point by about a month. And so we're going to push into November. As Gary has mentioned to us, the holiday season will be important in 2021. To have some convenient parking. And so our absolute goal is to have that ready before the holiday season in November. And then the center section of the garage will reopen. It will reopen likely without the eastern section being ready, because they will have to continue the work going vertical before they can open up the eastern section. So we'll still have the center section available for parking, and that's 351 spaces total in the entire garage once it's expanded. And then the construction of the mixed use building will be coming out of the ground shortly, sometime late this year. We're going to probably start the foundations in July is what the schedule shows. And so then that work will continue for the conference center and the residential project until mid to late 2023 when it's slated to be completed.
Okay, thank you, guys. Allison and Jennifer, questions?
Yeah, okay, thank you. We did get one question in from the Q&A, but I think Bruce and Greg, I think you actually answered it fairly in detail right now. So we are going to...
Why don't you go ahead and read that one, if you don't mind, just so it's on the record here.
Yeah, yes, indeed. So the question is, will both parking structures share the same entrance and exits?
Yeah, and so what I typed in there, Greg, was the upper two levels of the Ithacan parking level, which you showed, will be accessed from the center section of the garage, just like they are now. So those parking spaces in the upper two levels of parking, including the podium, would be accessed just like they are now from the center section of the garage. We do have a cross access easement going into place to allow that to continue to happen. And then the lowest level of garage on the Ithacan has its own entrance off of Green Street.
Right. Correct.
Okay. Other questions? What do we have so far? Any more?
Yeah, there's another one out there from looks like Peggy Coleman.
Yep, Peggy Coleman. It appears that the Ithacan development creates more space between the Marriott and the new Ithacan Tower. Did I see that correctly? Talk a little bit about that, Greg.
No, basically the tower, naturally, the tower is going to be, there'll be a space, an alley space from the tower to the hotel, naturally. But from a ground floor standpoint, the existing Rothschild, the existing setup right now to the hotel and to the parking garage really remains intact.
Okay. While we wait for folks, type in your questions, because we have plenty of we have time, and we want to obviously get all the questions that you'd like to have answered done here. While we have more coming in, why don't you tackle this one, which is tell us a little bit about how trash removal, recycling will happen as part of this project. Obviously, right now, most of this area uses a shared trash compactor and dumpsters underneath Center Ithaca. Talk a little bit about how that's going to work. during construction.
So the trash compactor is technically on the currently the city property, which will soon be the Vecino property. And that trash compactor and whole access area has no plans for any changes. We're going to clean it up and freshen it up a little bit, but other than that, there's really no changes to that access. There could be potential, as Greg can attest to here shortly. There may be some potential for some safety precautions that need to be taken while there's some demolition activity happening close to that compactor. And I'll sort of let him tackle what his plans are for that.
Yeah, so basically, we do demo a common wall between the trash compactor area currently and our parking structure. So during demolition, we will have that barricaded. It'll all be safety compliant. And it is a 3-day process to take that wall down. We are targeting that for the last part of the demolition of the garage. And we will work closely with Bruce and the city to make sure that that's maintained. And, naturally, that's one of those situations where it might have to be done. The work taking that part of the garage down, that wall, will have to be done, after hours, or we'll coordinate to make sure it's in an optimum time that nobody's, where there's not a lot of traffic using it. And we'll give ample notice. So everyone, we'll share the notice with the city, and who'll share with the residents, not the residents, but the Ithaca Commons people that use that trash compact area.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer Kushner, you have other questions coming in?
There was a question about how the project will impact the public transit and the intercity bus station on the opposite side of the road. And I can answer that one, actually. So right now, we don't expect any impact on the intercity buses. There's been a lot less intercity buses lately, but the bus stop will remain in the same location, and we have a queuing spot over by the gas station a little further down for days when we might anticipate higher levels of intercity buses around the school arrivals and departure times. And we'll just keep monitoring that. But as of right now, it shouldn't have an impact on that. I don't know if JoAnn or anybody else has anything more to add about city buses. Otherwise, we have other questions here about the loading zones and how it will be affected during construction.
The loading zone. So I think the question, is it specifically about the loading zones that are currently next to City Hall, or is it in general?
It's just a general question. They want to know about loading zones and how they will be impacted during construction.
So the loading zones, there's currently some parking that's available in front to the east side, next to City Hall. That area will be more constricted than it is now. And currently those are parking spaces that are perpendicular parking to City Hall. Once the construction fences go up, they will maintain access in the north-south direction there, back to the area, sort of in that there's a little corner back in the northwest corner that's off property but available to other businesses, and so that has to remain open. And then we're going to generate a few parallel parking spaces within that zone instead of perpendicular parking spaces for short-term loading. We've also worked with the city to adjust the signage and the availability of loading zones south side of City Hall of Green Street. Along Green Street, the north side of Green Street, we've got some signage being produced that would expand that area a little bit. And then also on the west side, on the east side of Cayuga Street, some additional zones there. And we've also worked with Eric Hathaway to generate some additional signage for the bus loading zones as well.
And if I recall, those Green Street loading zones in front of City Hall are happen before mid-morning. I mean, they're early in the day. So I think one thing will be important to do is to sort of make sure if there are big trucks and scheduling coming, if they want to get really close, and that's probably as close as they can get,
Correct. Yeah,
that-
either
that-
that, yeah, either
it-
up South
it-
City Hall or on Green Street, depending on how they want to load and unload.
Yep. So we'll get details out on those to people as soon as we get them. Other questions that either Jennifer or Jen or Allison want to read off?
Yeah, we do have some questions that have come in through the Q&A. So I'll start to go through those. This is a question for probably both Bruce and Greg. What will the impact be to surrounding merchants between demolition and construction? Will any entrances be relocated or shut down temporarily or long-term?
So from all our work basically impacts our area of Green Street. The Marriott, the current loading dock area for the Marriott and their side entrance will remain intact. It will be barricaded off, but we will have no impact on the commons area whatsoever.
And from our perspective, all the entrances that are currently accessible to those businesses along the east-west alleyway, I'll call it, between us and Herald Square will remain open. They will be partially covered with scaffolding. And so we'll have to work with each business owner and property owner to work on that. We've also talked to a couple of property owners about their need to access their building for some repairs and construction work that they want to do. And so we've agreed to relocate or move or sort of rearrange the scaffolding as needed for when they want to do that. We've also worked with business owners who have entrances on the south side of their businesses versus straight onto the commons, and trying to accommodate that their other front door as well. And then City Hall also faces some of that construction, and we don't plan on closing any of those. They should all remain open, not only in Center Ithaca, but along that entire corridor for egress purposes as well. So they'll always have that availability for egress purposes 24/7, 365.
Okay, next question is, can each developer share more about how you might directly communicate the various phases of construction with neighbors and surrounding businesses? I.e., what downtown business can expect in terms of notifications prior to major construction phases being started?
Greg, I'll start with that, then you can wrap up. It's Bruce from the Vecino Group here. We, through the process of wanting to be clear and transparent as possible, have created a communications website that will be accessed by the stakeholders in the project. And by the stakeholders, I simply mean the owners of our project, the surrounding directly adjacent business property owners, as well as the city, DIA, fire department, building department, and several others. Our goal here is to every week to update that site with the 2-week look ahead of construction activity, 2 to 3 weeks. And then if in fact it appears that there's something, and I suppose the DIA and the city can decide how much of that gets transmitted out to area businesses with their contacts, the DIA directly with all the stuff in downtown, and then the city, if it's a general public notice of things happening, they can sort of decide how that goes out and when it goes out. But we're generating this site in order to open the communication lines and make it available to all the stakeholders.
And from our standpoint, we will coordinate with JoAnn and Gary and provide a 2-week look ahead on our work. Any significant shutdowns or anything that will affect the Ithaca Commons tenants will be we'll give ample notice, and we'll coordinate with the city. So we're going to create one situation where the correspondence comes from one source instead of going to multiple sources. And I think JoAnn and Gary could provide that source to the commons tenants during the process. So.
Okay. Allison, other questions?
Yes, this is actually a question for Greg. And the question is, it appears that the Ithaca development creates more space between the Marriott and the new Ithacan Tower. Can you verify this, Greg?
Well, as I previously said, there will, the tower is set back a ways from the current hotel, but it will not create any additional space between the Marriott and our project. Right now, the current Rothschild building remains intact, and that side entrance remains intact, and will reopen upon completion of the project. So.
The next question is, when does the Asteri project anticipate pile driving by Home Dairy Alley, and how long will it last?
Okay, so I'll answer that question with as best an answer as I can give you today. So the project has been designed, geotechnical reporting has been done. A basis of design for deep pile foundations has been generated by the geotechnical engineer. The structural engineer designed the basis of design piles, which are H-shape vibratory driven piles. We put that portion of the project out for pricing and bids to subcontractors. We have 5 qualified bids from 5 different subcontractors. Those contractors have all recommended something a little different than what the basis of design was and is. So now the construction team is in the process of talking with our engineering team with every individual one to make sure and discuss whether they're still, whether their alternative option is a viable option or not. One of those options is a non-vibratory pile foundation system. And so it's possible that we don't even have those being vibrated down. However, as far as the answer to the question goes, if we're driving piles, the schedule shows them starting in July. I don't know if they're going to start from west to east or east to west. So that's still in process, but the schedule shows about 1.5 to 2 months of deep foundations starting in July of 2021. Long answer to a short question.
Okay. Other questions? I see we have 3 more. Let's see if we can get through these really quickly.
Sure. Can you talk about the when hours of construction will occur, maybe during the week versus the weekends, and speak to it kind of maybe individually or at large? JoAnn, maybe this might be good for you to weigh in on as well.
So typically our approval process allows for construction, noise producing construction from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. We on occasion do give permission to work on weekends for crews, especially when they're doing something that needs to be continuous, like a concrete pour or something to stay on schedule. Typically what I'll do is I'll get a request from the GC, and I send out an email to both to the alder people and to the codes enforcement personnel and to the neighbors. And so that everyone knows that this is happening and there is an opportunity. If I get a request at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, there's not a lot of time to respond, but typically I'll get a request earlier in the week. I send it out to everyone to weigh in, especially if there's some activity that we had not anticipated that this might impact. But I try to give prior notice and listen to the concerns. And if there's an overwhelming concern about the work being done, then typically we won't issue the permit, but that's rare. Usually we try to work with the development team to get this work done as quickly as possible. And that sometimes does require weekend, but that will be by permit only.
Thanks, JoAnn. 2 more questions?
Okay, will there be a power lapse to move the NYSEG vault that sits at the end of Home Dairy Alley?
I don't know if the NYSEG vault at the end of Home Dairy Alley is going to move. I do think that as they open and close different circuits, there will not be any big lapse in time. There might be a 15-minute 10-minute lapse, depending on when that is. And that's something we'll have to notify all the related or affected property owners of. I don't have a schedule from NYSEG at this point in time. They have promised it multiple times along with the total project plan. I'm hoping to get it this week. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I'm not going to hold my breath. But there will be some temporary, switchovers. I'll just call them cutovers from one circuit to another, but they won't ever be down for any length of time.
I think we have one more question there.
We have one more question in the Q&A, and then we have one more question that we just wanted to ask that came in earlier. Maybe this question is for Bruce. With the construction, how will Herald Square move-ins happen or be affected with the construction zone in front of the building?
Right. So that's a really good question. And I think it's going to be a matter of a couple of different opportunities or options. And it's something we probably need to directly coordinate with the Herald Square operations team. But as I see it, we still will maintain an access in the north-south direction from Green Street to the east-west pedestrian alley. And the entrance, the rear entrance to Herald Square, the south entrance will still be available and open. It will be constricted. It will be covered by scaffolding through that pedestrian area. And so, it won't be as easy to maneuver, very large things, but there will be a minimum of 6 feet wide, which is a pair of doors, the same as a pair of doors through that area. I also imagine, I'm sort of imagining in the future, it's likely we or the city might get a request to load and unload off the commons in the timeframes which that's allowed. If that's another option for moving vehicles to come in and unload things. So that's another opportunity or an option that Herald Square could have for move-ins.
Yeah, JoAnn, you might reference that, or Jen. That option does exist.
Yeah, and Jen is most familiar with that, and she'll be working with, whoever needs a permit to be on the commons during those times. And there are times when the vehicles are allowed. So Jen Kushner is the point person for that.
Yeah, if somebody needs a vehicle on the commons, then we do allow them to get access before 9 a.m. And you can contact me for more information on that. We do have one final question that came in, and it's about the same topic. It's just about the impacts on the pedestrian access from the construction. And says, will there be disruptions to pedestrian access on the commons? And if so, what will that look like? Will there be intermittent or temporary? So if you can just talk a little bit more, I guess, about what the disruptions might look like to pedestrian access.
Pedestrian access on the commons?
On the commons.
Yeah, at this point in time, I don't even say at this point in time, in general, we have no impact. We have zero impact on the commons itself. So I would say there would be no impact to pedestrian access on the commons from the Asteri side.
And that would be, that's true for both projects, right?
Both projects, yep.
If you're interested, I can pull up the detours that we proposed through Home Dairy Alley, that just for a final clarification, that if it's helpful.
I think you walked through those previously. I mean, there really are two options. You can meander behind the project, behind the garage project, over just to the City Hall area and gain access to Green Street that way, or you can go around down the Commons and down Cayuga Street.
Correct.
Those are your two options for access. Right.
And just for clarification, there is a staircase at the far east of the Marriott Hotel that connects Green Street to Aurora Street, and that will remain open through the life of the project. And I know some of us who have gotten used to sort of the new patterns tend to use that staircase, because the staircase that currently is used quite a bit within the Green Garage will be closed for the length of the project, but the one to the east will remain open.
Okay. Well, if you have additional questions, feel free to contact certainly us at the DIA or city planning directly. And we can get those questions answered or get them to the appropriate people on the development teams who can provide us with answers. Other than that, we're looking forward to moving this along and to seeing these things successfully completed. It's going to look beautiful, and it's going to really, have a really profound impact on our downtown community. So thank you to you all, and thanks for joining us this morning. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
now.
thanks.
Bye-bye.